Alright, so we're going to load the game. Once it loads, it's going to jump in and I'm immediately going to have a plane to take care of, but I'm going to pause the game. We hear the annoying voice and we'll kind of talk about the interface a little bit.
Philadelphia, hour. Globe for 4906 requesting push and start.
Okay, so there's my first plane. I've got to push and start. So let's take a look at the interface first. We'll start at the bottom right with the strips. This is where all the arrivals and departures will show up. It can get pretty crowded. I need to make my strip bigger. I'm going to have to reconfigure this whole page a little bit, but right now I'm keeping it at the default until I get kind of the hang of everything. But the strips will give you information. So this is the plane's call sign. I forget what TRP stands for. This is altitude, heading, settings, I believe, or first plane of the day. It's been way too long since I've played these games seriously to remember it all. I do know this is Philadelphia where I am, and he's going to LGA, which I believe is LaGuardia in New York. Other information, this will be telling me what he's done. Right now he's dashed, meaning he's still sitting at the apron waiting for me to push him. And over here it'll be the runway that he's heading to. Arrivals, same type of deal. It'll give me altitude, altitude, speed, and where they're coming and going from, as well as the runway they're expecting to land on, and then where I've got them going. And if there's a check mark in the field, it means I've given them clearance to land or take off. Bottom left, we have my regional radar. You can see I have an arrival on its way in right here. Select him. That's going to be a Magic 4068. He's at 30,000 feet. And he's coming in at 220 knots. Alright, so if I zoom in, you can see my airport. The dotted lines are what tell the ATC, the center control centers, which runways I've got open, so they know where they can route planes into me. And once I selected him, my ground map showed me the gate area that he's expecting to come into. Now the gate areas can be a little bit confusing to look at, because when you see these, you would think somebody would drive into the empty space and then pull into the terminal, and that's not entirely how it works, but that's kind of where it goes. And again, it can get a little bit confusing. So this plane here, he's at the apron. He'll push back out into this row on hotel, taxiway hotel, and then head out. So when you're watching these planes and you're getting them in and out, you really got to pay attention to where they are docked at the aprons here, and pulling them in and out is going to be a little bit confusing, because if you have multiple planes, you got arrivals, you got departures, you got to watch where everybody is and pay attention to it. Now the ground map is awesome. You can zoom out, you can zoom in, you get all this beautiful detail, and you actually get realistic taxiways so that you can actually move planes around. So what I'll probably do is I'll use Juliet here as my departures for most everything, and then I'll use Kilo as my arrivals. And that's how I'll bring them in and get them going where they need to go. Most of my arrivals are coming in on 9 left, and my departures I'll probably use 9 right here, and I'll probably use 35. I'll do that again, and I'll probably use 9 left. Just depends on my arrival patterns and where everybody is. So that's the ground radar. At the bottom of these windows, you have 3 little dots where you can resize them. Again, I will probably be making these a lot bigger in the future just so I have more view. On the air radar, each of the green circles, I believe, represents 5 miles in distance. So you're supposed to maintain about 5 miles of separation between any plane and 1,000 vertical feet of separation for any plane. Usually that's because every 1,000 feet, the direction of traffic can change, especially when you're at higher altitudes. For takeoffs, you usually need to have about 3 minutes of separation between planes, especially if it's a prop taking off after a jet, things like that you got to keep track of. And that's pretty much it for the radar side of things. Now the command window up here highlights in green which runways I'm accepting landings on, and I can change this on the fly if I so choose. I could activate the right runway. Now you can see my arrivals shut off to that side. I'm going to leave it as default for the moment, but you can activate and deactivate this in real time as you choose. Now if you select an airplane, it's going to put their call sign up here, and you have some of the options to click. So you don't have to speak, and there are a few that for some reason voice recognition goes a little screwy or haywire, and you just have to use the manual commands. So you can tell them what to do. First command would be push back and then expect runway 9 right. And then I can send that, and it will send him off to that runway. So very powerful, pretty awesome. You can turn on the landing lights if it sets into nighttime. Don't really need to do that. This turns off all the different systems that you have. Again, don't really need that. You can call the last plane, pause your game, take a screenshot, and speed it up to 16x real time if you need to. And you can also zoom in a tiny bit. Now what's cool here is you can see all of these different planes that are on the ground. At some point these planes will actually call for pushing. And the ones that have their lights on are the ones that are getting ready to go. So every one of these planes that has its lights on is pretty soon going to reach out to me to get clearance to move. It's paused. Oh, awesome. Earlier it wasn't going to let me do that. So let's see if I can find some things here. Here's a bus. Some of the plane personnel will come out on buses depending on which plane they're going to. Let's see if I can find some other ground crews right now. I don't know if I'll be able to see anything other than the tugs. Yeah, so here's a bus. What you can see, which is a good indicator of what's going on at the airport, is you'll be able to see food trucks coming out to planes before the lights come on. Then the food truck will go away. The fuel truck will then come over to it, and then the lights will kick on, and then they'll begin boarding. After that, they'll call for a push. You give them clearance to push, and you can watch the apron pull back to the terminal, and then they'll actually get pushed out by a tug and taxi off. So it's pretty cool what you can see and do. At the top, you have a compass that tells you what direction the wind is coming from. It's speed, so the wind is coming from direction 54, which is up here from the northeast, heading to the southwest, and it's about 4 knots. Sometimes, depending on the conditions, you'll need to let your pilots know, but again, this is all basic, and I'm not going to worry about that. You can see all little cars driving around the road down there. So that's the interface. It's pretty early in the morning. I don't know if I can find the sun. Yep, sun's already up over there blinding me. So I'm going to reset this. We'll jump in and actually do some gameplay.